about a philosophical issue, rather. The energy exchange has operated for a while, and we have seen certain issues. For example, the operation of the stabilizing market and the issue that you described related to the lack, the inexistence of market, secondary market. What about the market? Is it self-regulated or not?
I need to be careful. Of course, there is the regulator, the RAE, and of course the regulator has the rights and obligations that have to do with smooth developments in the energy market. On the other hand, the market always finds balance points. So this is a form of self-regulation. Why? Because you can see that in the exchange, because there is the offer and there's the demand, and these two things come together in a place where they have to be tied together in a way, and in order to create the price that will lead the market in the end. So, of course, the market is being regulated. We do have the regulating authority, but also the market itself has its way to find these points of balance. And even so, though we have these changes, fluctuations, changing in pricing, what we see is that through the target model, the market gets the signals and proceeds, moves forward. We have not seen any points that are the fault of the market itself. The main signals give us the tendency, and the system proceeds. Let me talk about derivatives as well. It is my sense, with regard to the derivatives market, that the participants were not ready to get into this logic because there was a different philosophy, a different approach. But I think that this crisis that we are going through now will make everyone use these tools. They will be acquainted with them, and they will start acting as true participants and true players, because this situation will continue. We will still have fluctuations in the future, and we need to find the ways to not be exposed to such, vulnerable to such fluctuations, especially when we create long-term contracts with our customers. In your view, as Mr. Lomakis, last year the prices were very low. Why did we not have contracts being made with such favorable prices? Was it a matter of demand or offer? I'd say because we see it now and it's something completely different. I think that then a lot of players were expecting great drops in the pricing due to this transition to the target model, due to this change. And so they were not very keen on entering into contracts that, by the way, the market maker quotes prices, and they can see how this thing goes. So I would say it was a matter of people expecting different things, and people not being able to actually see and evaluate the potential of these tools. Where do you think the Greek market will reach the state of maturity where right now 70% are derivative contracts and only 30% is the market? I would say something that we discussed a lot in previous panels. It's easy to have bilateral contracts, OTC contracts, right now, and it was easy to have them 6 months ago. All we need is two partners to enter into the contract, and these two go into the market And the energy exchange does not care with what exactly the agreement between the two parties says. So we do have those tools, and it's not the model, the target model that limits them. Maybe we want to go into something different in terms of those bilateral contracts. I don't know about that. But let's say, how much time do we need to get to a balance in the market? I think that, first of all, not all the model is complete, so we are a bit behind. We don't have the continuous negotiation in intraday market. That will be concluded within 2022, and I hope that until that time, the derivatives market will pick up. It does seem to start right now. But the intraday market is very important for me in order to actually have a complete model, and then we are able to say that yes, we are operating in the entire range of the target model. So let's wait for the start of 2022 and get a better idea of where we are going. Before we move on to the area special account, I want to stay a little bit on the subject. Terna Energy has closed the first bilateral contracts with its customers. How difficult was it from your side, the NRES producer, to find customers that would accept, and industrial customers or medium voltage customers nonetheless, people who would accept such contracts? Listen, it's a market that's now beginning to operate. It's newly developed market. It's far from being a mature market, and customers are not really keen on making long-term commitments. It wasn't an easy feat, but we do have a supplier in our group that does have access to final consumers. We have Iran in our group. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't easy in terms of the duration. It wasn't possible to have PPAs, purchase agreements, that are long-term, and consumers were not did not opt for such long-term contracts. But I would say that things matured rather quickly from the first discussions that we had maybe 4 or 5 months ago. Now we do have these bilateral contracts, these agreements with final consumers, that we pass the benefit from RES to those agreements, and that gave us a lead. The fact that Terna Energy has a very wide portfolio, has a lot of projects that are being developed, so it was possible for us to make contracts with a significant amount of power. Mr. Costantino, you also have a large portfolio, Mr. Papakostantino, a large portfolio of development at Motor Oil. Do you plan on making contracts with your customers in order to present them to your banks or whatever for funding reasons? Yes, of course, that's the way forward for us. And in fact, the largest part of the portfolio that we are developing right now, in our initial planning, was not included in a fixed tariff or any of the RAE tenders. So we believe we're going to go through contracts. The market is still developing, it's not mature, like Mr. Lumaki said, but from both sides. On the side of the developer, it's clear, because they cannot fund such contracts if they don't have, if the agreement is not in place. On the other hand, the customer right now is asking for those bilateral contracts because they are facing very high costs. And seeing the prices that we heard recently, as Mr. Lumaki said, 30s and 40s, they think that such contracts will give them access to such energy costs. whether or not the customers are mature enough to be committed long term, or whether or not the developer is mature enough to accept a fixed tariff at such levels when the market is now giving a different price, that's something that needs time. And that's where we have these organized markets, the energy exchange, to facilitate this process. They provide the liquidity, the necessary liquidity to help us assume the risks that we're facing. And I also want to comment on what Mr. Ioannou said and add that we are going to capture the market when we move away from the limitations that we are seeing right now, when all the products are part of the market, and when we have more liquidity so all participants are comfortable enough to participate. All that are based on the time axis. Everything is going to, in the end, it's going to happen, but our need is for it to happen fast enough. When all the limitations are out of the way, then we will not be talking about regulation or self-regulation or anything. Time is pressing us, and it's pressing us when consumers are starting to have complaints, and they will become bored or tired very shortly and say, okay, energy transition is one thing, but I need to heat my home in the winter. Now, what is the role of the energy exchange on the next day, the day after? Right now you're regulating the market, but what's the role, excuse me, of the RES special account? Well, we're a significant player right now in the energy exchange, but the problem is that we represent perhaps the largest portfolio and the most gigawatts in the intraday market, but we have difficulties in participating. How can we participate in a market when the rest of the players, to put it like that, have all the resources they want, whether they are forecast systems or prediction systems or financial forecasts, analysis, or whatever type of banking support or any other assistance they may get, because they are private companies, and we are called to participate, and we have all these difficulties and the rigidness of a public company, but that's how it is. There are solutions, however. The solution is that the PEP, when it comes to issues, the renewable energy sources and guarantees of origin operator, the PEP, we need to participate on equal terms in this market, this energy market, whether it's the intraday market or later the derivatives market. What I want to say is that we have the solution for public companies that were deregulated and free, that were free of this problems. We have the model of AOD. Even if it is a public company, it has a freedom of movement. They can sign contracts. We cannot do that. And that is the main obstacle for us in order to have the free operation of the intraday market. Now let's talk a little bit about the new RES special account. And I want to make clear that this new RES special account, it's a term that came to be from the proposal that was given to the Recovery Resilience Fund, and when the RRF, we needed to give a name, we needed to submit a proposal that said in order to get the funding, the grant, 200 million, which we needed and we need to get. And this should not appear small as a number compared to the total area special account fund, which is more than 2 billion. We need these 200 million. So we had to create this new account in order to make this proposal. In essence, it is not a new account. Let's say perhaps it's a sub-account of the area special account. It's something that will be managed in the same way as the other columns of the sub-accounts that are part of the area special account. Same as we have a column, let's say a factor, in this very complex equation that has to do with the old contracts, the PA contracts, or with differential surcharge contracts. We are going to have a new dimension here added to the RES special account. So let me clarify that it's not the old RES account and the new RES account. It's a new, a single account with an addition, another addition in its sub-accounts, just to clarify. Though perhaps there's a question of whether or not the new RES special account will have better response and the old players will have problems. No, it's going to be one single treatment on the part of the renewable energy sources and guarantees of energy operator for everyone, for all producers. We pay with no delays, and the market sees that. It's part of our total effort in the last years to modernize and transform the PEP. So the health and the sustainability of the special account is something that is an intricate part of our efforts. But I also want to say something about storage, because the area special account monopolized the discussion and the prices in the market. But truly, the object of this conference is storage, and I want to say that whoever is fighting the renewable energy sources, because there is part of, there are some people who don't want to deal with RES, don't want it. Those say that RES are good, but they have this stochasticity. What happens when there's no wind? What happens when it's the night and there's no sun? This uncertainty that is scientifically called stochasticity, it's the weak point of RES. Well, this weak point is covered, fully covered by storage. This is why storage is tied to RES. Storage and RES, storage as an independent production unit. For example, a thermal production unit could be considered a storage unit, but the point is to have storage in order to solve the stochasticity problem. That's very important, and it is something that we need to include in the legislation, in the provisions that we make for the future. We will come back to this matter of storage, but Mr. Loumakis, you have criticized, you have said some comments, made some comments on this new and old RES special account. Well, what we heard now is very, very good information. The fact that this new RES special account is simply a new subdomain of the special account. We have even heard things about the bad and the good special account. So it's not just us that have our anxieties about this. Now, regarding those people who are not interested at all in RES, I would call them right now. I would call them, they cannot, and I would say to them that they cannot expect that the market is always exactly as it suits them. The market maker has made a difference. So right now we have a positive momentum for RES in terms of bilateral contracts, because on the one hand we have many projects that are becoming mature in terms of licensing, and we also have very low prices for RES, perhaps because some were maybe exaggerated a little bit at the tenders. So we have a very low price at RES. There's a great deal of high offer, and in terms of the large consumers that don't have their own production, they should try to get into the first into this PPS instead of throwing stones at RES. That's the first comment. The other thing is that I've seen a change in the state, a very positive change. Before the target model started, everyone wanted a market that would be just a SWOT market, especially for RES. They would say that the market is used to having these very cheap contracts from TAPEP, the Renewable Energy Sources and Guarantees of Origin Operator. But with the target model starting, they were expecting that to say that, okay, you are now going to the wholesale market. But they see they have to go back now, back on their words, because the market, with all the ups and downs, this roller coaster, cannot be sustained by anyone except from the very, very small producers. If you have to make investments, then it's impossible to sustain it. So let me just say that I'm very happy with these clarifications of how the new RES special account is going to be operate. So let's not call it the new RES special account, just a part of the special account. Mr. Dimitriou, you have a very wide investment portfolio in terms of energy storage. Unfortunately, we don't have Mrs. Duku with us. Perhaps she could have shed more light to the intentions of the ministry, but what do you expect in terms of the legislative initiatives from the Ministry of Energy and Climate and the Environment? What do you see in order to have energy storage being productive? Well, energy storage is very important. It's a technology, of course, that needs to be supported in order to be able to penetrate into the system. That does not mean that it does not have benefits and that does not offer a cost reduction. It's a very typical case where OPEX becomes a CAPEX, which means that you have to spend money at the start, but then the amortization is very fast for the system. So we need to create a very cohesive framework, regulatory framework, a pricing framework that will make provisions for transparent and equal participation in the market to the day market and all the individual markets of the target model, and something that will forecast in a fair and reasonable way and cost price and pay the services provided to the system. Now, if we talk about between pump storage or battery storage, Pump storage can offer what we say as what we call as energy services, or succeed in arbitrage, or perhaps not more than one day dealing, balancing energy balancing and price shaving can be used as backup in the system. Batteries have a very fast response and can offer their services like that. So this set of services is very important for the system. It has high added value. So to conclude, this is a framework that will need to determine the way the storage will participate in the market, will be costed, and will be paid for. And when we talk about the RES portfolio and storage systems, which has its use, of course, because we have a synergy between the two technologies, so that will highlight its value even more. We need to iron out all the technical details and determine a few things that are to know exactly how this will operate. Mr. Papakonstantinou, does Motor Oil examine the prospect of investing in storage, and under what conditions? We are already getting started. We have locations in Greece where we are examining the installation of battery banks when the legislative framework is announced. To answer quickly, we also expect from the legislation full inclusion in the target model, so it's clear how it operates, how it is costed, how it is paid for. But I will also say that for motor oil, storage is not just batteries. Storage also comes to support and resolve this stochastic problem with the RES, but storage also needs to work for peak shaving. We have short-term storage, batteries. We have mid-term storage with pumped storage, but we also need to have long-term storage, and that we will achieve through hydrogen when we have it. But right now, today, the only form of long-term storage that we have is natural gas, and we need to say that we are investing very consciously to the FSRU at the Agioi Theodori, because we think that natural gas is the transition fuel and will continue to be until the technologies are mature enough to support the energy transition. It's necessary in order to keep pricing low, but to do that, we need to have storage in natural gas with infrastructure that are expensive, are complex, are not supported by the European Union or by the banks, but as we have seen, without them, it will not be possible to buy the time that we need in order to achieve the energy transition. Maybe we need to wait for the European Union toolkit. Maybe there will be a change in the way they deal with natural gas. I'm not very optimistic. Maybe, but I'm not very optimistic. They are not going to make too many waves. They have set a policy, a strategy, and it's not easy to deviate from that. In the framework of this strategy, however, we as a country and we as investors also need to do what has to be done so that the market can operate in a healthy way. We need to make our investments at the same time that we invest in RES. Mr. Ioannou, will it be possible to include storage in the target model? Yes, I think that I said that from the beginning. All these pieces, all these parts could be included in the operation. We don't know exactly how, but we have the intentions, and we are discussing with all the involved parties so that we can find the best possible way. We do have the tools It's not something new. We have the tools to do it. So we're not talking about storage only, but even the dynamic participation of many small players in the operation, from cars, vehicles that will need charging, or from other players. But that needs to be a little bit more mature so that we are certain that we are not going to create more problems than we solve. So indeed, storage is a very important tool, because for the first time it will give us the opportunity to see electricity as to have an inventory of a stock of electricity, because so far what we know is that electricity is produced, goes to the grid, is consumed, that's that. Having storage, we will have an inventory of energy, not only to balance these ups and downs, but also to participate actively in forming the price. This concept of the inventory will give us new tools so that we can find the ways to manage the market. I think that this wraps up our discussions. We heard many interesting things, all the hot topics right now and the prospects for the future. Thank you very much, everyone, and hope we have a good conference.